God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins that he might deliver us from this present evil age according to the will of God and Father, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. Galatians 1 verses 3 to 5. Today I would like to describe about the 4 missionary journeys of Paul. In the passion for sharing the story of Jesus, Paul traveled over 10,000 miles. He went through land and sea and visited many countries in modern places as Greece, Turkey and Syria. Paul describes about his journey in 2 Corinthians 11 verses 25 to 27 as, 3 times I was beaten with rods, once I was pelted with stones, 3 times I was shipwrecked, I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. So now let's take a look on Paul's 4 missionary journeys. In Bible, Paul's first missionary journey is mentioned in Acts chapter 13 and 14. When the church in Antioch was fasting and worshipping, the Holy Spirit marked Paul and Barnabas for a unique missionary journey. In this missionary journey, the first place for them was Cyprus. When they reached Cyprus, John Mark assisted them as they proclaimed the gospel to the synagogues. At Paphos, a man named Elymas greeted them, whom Paul called out as a child of the devil. From Cyprus, they traveled to Perga and Pamphylia. At this point, John Mark decided to abandon the team and return to Jerusalem. Paul shared the gospel in the synagogue, and at first they all received it, but later when the crowds gathered to hear gospel, Jews got jealous and began to insult Paul. Paul instructed the crowds that he was no longer going to minister Jews but Gentiles. Hearing this, Gentiles were filled with joy. But the Jews started to persecute Paul and they were forced to leave. Paul's second missionary journey is mentioned in Acts chapter 15 verses 36 to chapter 18 verses 22. In this journey, when Barnabas suggested to bring back John Mark, Paul disagreed, as he had abandoned them. The argument was so tense that they split up. Barnabas took John Mark and Paul again left for Asia Minor with Silas. Paul goes to Lystra and he joined up with Timothy, whose mother was a Jew and father was a Greek. Paul circumcised Timothy because it was necessary that Timothy's background not to be distraction for Jews. The Holy Spirit propelled Paul's team northwest toward the region of Phrygia and Galatia. In Troas, Paul gets a vision of a man from Macedonia begging for help. From there, the team sailed across the Aegean Sea to Neapolis in Macedonia, currently part of Greece. Then they headed toward Philippi, a critical city in Macedonia, where they stayed for several days. After Macedonia, the team went to Riya, where the Jews were studious and paid close attention to Paul's message. Many Jews joined the church as well as many Gentiles. Then Paul went to Athens and Silas and Timothy stayed behind in Berea. When Paul was alone in Athens, he became upset about all the city's idolatry. He started sharing gospel with the crowds in the marketplace. Many were interested in hearing, but few murmured. Then Paul left to Corinth. There Paul met a Jewish couple, Aquila and Priscilla, who were tent makers. There the Corinthian Jews attacked him. Then Paul left Silas and Timothy there and took Aquila and Priscilla with him to Ephesus. In Ephesus he preached and left to Caesarea, leaving Priscilla and Aquila in Ephesus. Paul's third missionary journey is mentioned in Acts chapter 18 verses 23 to chapter 21 verses 14. Paul went back to Ephesus and instructed believers on the difference between water baptism and the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Then he spent the next 3 months preaching in the synagogue. From there, Paul set off for Macedonia and traveled around strengthening the churches. Then he went to Greece and stayed there for 3 months. Then he went to Troas through Macedonia. There he raised a man named Ethicus from death. Then Paul and his companion went back to Asia Minor. Paul's fourth missionary journey is mentioned in the book of Romans. When Paul first planned to go to Rome, he hoped to continue to Spain as well. But the journey to Rome became a prisoner's journey rather than the traveler's journey. Paul's imprisonment is believed to have ended when his fourth missionary journey